Welcome to Fontribute, where we talk about fonts and their attributes. Fontribute. I'm joined with Derek, a long time watcher of Fontribute. Derek, thank you for joining me.
Hello, everybody. I'm Derek.
Yes. So Derek was telling me he was in a type design program this current semester, and he had a final project that he felt he wanted to share at Fontribute. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So then you've named it MonoCromo. If I'm Yeah, great. And basically he sent it over to me, asked for a review investigation with Fontribute, and I decided to pair it with Drive Mono as a comparison of the two to learn more about MonoCromo. So in that case, we can get started. And then we'll start with the typical setup of the lowercase n. So I'll start drawing to demonstrate the points. So the first thing to note in general is it appears there's a directional serifed approach in MonoCromo versus a sans serif approach in Drive Mono. By their naming, and also I know by previously reviewing, they're both monospace fonts, so they're generally the same widths of all the letters. That's what makes something a monospace font in general. So this is going to be interesting to observe how this decision of serifs is going to affect usage. So in addition to that, there's some approach in terms of their joint that is different. It appears that MonoCromo is much deeper in its joint and how it basically starts from the top down to the bottom versus a shorter transition from the top of the shoulder in Drive Mono to the stem. And
so, yeah.
Oh, you have something to say?
No. Yeah, that's correct about my font.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, we can say it appears that MonoCromo is a higher contrast compared to Drive Mono. I'd say that because of the variance of the joint to the hip to the shoulder, compare that to Drive Mono. So we'll see in typesetting if that's going to hold that observation. Let's see. Some other notes related to the depth is there appears to be a much more roundedness feeling. I'm feeling overall from this joint and shoulder situation in MonoCromo versus a more abrupt approach in Drive Mono. Yes. So those observations I can see so far. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on, Derek?
No, it's just that when I was designing MonoCromo, I was trying for a sans humanist approach with letters. So the thing I was looking forward was to doing really easy shapes with the white space. So that's where the roundness came from here. Instead of the sharp whites that you see in other letters. And I think that's decision I took because I was trying to make legibility very important, and with this high there's a bigger X height. So I don't know, I think the round shapes work better with the white space on these letters, especially with the mono space. You have a lot of problems with spacing, fitting all the black inside the box. So this was a decision made to keep the whites balance. That's it. Oh.
Great. Yeah, well, for the X-height conversation, I mean, I will say in general, because the way we do this in Fontribute is we treat the font at the same type size, basically out of the box from both designs. So we'll need to see the uppercase next to these letters, these lowercase letters, to verify the cap height relationship to the X height. We'll see.
Oh yeah.
But it is true generally your type on the body is larger in MonoCromo than on Drive Mono. So that would probably already, I can tell, in typesetting at the same settings of leading and font size, your font will look larger as a result. That much we can already confirm so far.
Okay.
So on monospace fonts, one of the ways we could distinguish it very clearly and easily is with the lowercase m, mainly because it has to fit the same width. The form of a monospace m is very particular. What ends up happening usually, and actually I wanted to point this out, is in this case we can see a much more rapid movement in the shoulder situation. What was interesting enough, it appears as if the contrast let me check. Let me see. I mean, certainly the momentum, definitely. I'm not sure about the weight of the joints, but definitely the momentum of this It's much more abrupt to solve the problem of fitting in 3 stems together. Also, it appears that this middle stem is lighter than the right stem and the left stem. In fact, let me verify that.
Yeah, it is lighter.
Yes. Oh, man, I love that stuff. That's cool. So it appears there were some decisions being made here to try to maximize, as you said, the white space, right? Keep this regular, but making sacrifices the black if necessary to make it fit.
I think you need to do it, especially with monotypes. It's just the stretchiness of the letters is gonna make the stems look super thick if you like always have the same width. So you always, I feel that you need to do like these corrections, because otherwise them is gonna just pop out of the text like a super big mark.
Yeah, Derek, would it be fair to say that that thinness in the middle is also true on the right side?
Yes, it's like this is the heaviest, smallest, and this is like
something
a little bit
between.
Yes, something in between.
Ah, I love that. That's great. Cool. I'm very curious how this. I mean, I'll be observing that. We'll be watching for that observation when we get to the settings. So another note. Actually, let me toggle right back. Oh yeah, you did have a shear or an angle on this, kind of top terminal area that was in the N and also in the M. But also, we can also note that the foot serifs have been removed again because. I assume why, because your set space is defined. So you realize you couldn't fit those serifs, directional serifs, into the form.
Yes, they are just there when you need space. Like when you need to fill in blank space, I put serifs. So here, no serif.
Very cool. Moving on to drive mono, it appears these appear to be equivalent in size, at least to my eye, right now. Actually, it's interesting. Yours got more abrupt in movement in the compressed form. This feels much more rounded in feeling compared to the N. Yeah, very fascinating. A very different approach. That's very cool. So that's a very particular difference. That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's radically different, actually, I would say. It's fascinating, the M. And again, it's, let's see. Actually, looking a little closer, I think this middle might be lighter than the right, definitely, than the left, excuse me, slightly. I wish I could just measure movement. Let's see if I can pull this off. And then, let's say I grab you. Oh, move you over. I'm going to really zoom in on this one to make sure I'm accurate on this. I'm going to draw a little close, more accurately. Just want to verify. Cool.
That's it. Yeah, that's
slightly thinner. Oh,
nice.
Love that. God, I love type design. Love that stuff. So as you can tell in a monochrome, I mean, that's the thing. Yours is much more distinctive in that approach.
Yes.
I'm doing it of making those design edits, but as you can tell, Drive Mono also does it as well. Excellent. Very cool. All right, on to the. We just spent like probably 5 minutes on just that M by itself.
It was worth it. The M's are the best part about mono space. The M and the W, it's amazing. Everybody does it different. I love it.
I wish I put it. I don't think I put the W. I should have done the W. I don't think I put it in. But all right. So let's move on to what we're seeing here. So in the rounds, I guess the angular approach in the N especially, I think this kind of squared approach for the O we see here. There is clearly a weight difference between the two. We can see that much. The drive feels like a darker color overall, especially next to the O's. I'm actually a little hesitant to talk about the contrast of the two relative to the two. I think in relationship to each other, they're relatively similar in proportion of their contrast. However, I mean, this is overall lighter text weight overall because of the general thickness of it compared to drive mono. But your form is much wider, right? It's a much wider form, much circular in shape. So I can see those things very clearly, especially the counter. The counter feels much more circular in the square approach over here.
Yes, I try to keep all my layers like on a kind of geometric style, but I don't know, that evolved a lot during the design process. So the O changed, like everything like was tended to be rounder, just to have a nicer gray, like text. I don't know. It was just something about the roundness that it made it like look better with the monospace, and with the serifs, it's like, I don't know. It's a weird balance, but yeah, it's circular.
Well, Derek, also, is there stray segments inside this counter?
Yes.
There you go.
I don't know. I think it makes like a visual, like a horizontal line, especially with all other letters. If like the C, the P, the D, and the O, they all have these straight lines. It makes it look like even something about that.
Okay. So, question, is that not the case on the outside contour? Is these just nodes here and here, for example?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Just like why I was able to notice that, because there's a certain flatness I was noticing here and here, right? That then transitions.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Also, is there symmetry in this O in terms of if I copy paste left side, the right side, they would be the same, or is there a variance going on? Because you said you were thinking about humanist sans a little bit.
It was, I did a copy paste symmetry, but then I adjusted the weight, so this one is thicker than this one.
I knew it.
I
was noticing that. I was thinking about. Sneaky. Okay, well, I was that because of the logic of the M? You were thinking a similar system.
Yes.
Okay.
All my letters have that system.
Fascinating. So does the N has that as well? Oh, hold on a second. Does the N has that as well?
The N as well. Yes.
Oh, it does.
Just like the calligraphy thing you do with the going up is darker than going down. So that's something our teacher was like trying to tell us a lot about, how these things like make it better for having a smooth reading. Like it just makes the text flow better because you read from here to here. So I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Okay, so across the board, the system has been to reduce the weight on the right side. Let us verify that's the case for Drive Mono as well. Nope. No, it's about the same. Okay.
No, they have not so much contrast.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, cool. This is quite the deeper project than I imagined, actually. So there's more nuances going on. So cool. Very interesting how this is all going to pan out. Okay, so on to the round straight combination. So from here, the system of the counter, right, is handled from the O carried over. The very deep,
here.
I'm sorry. And yes, the abruptness move over there. The abruptness, basically the depth of the joints is much, again, mimicked from the N, as we can see here. Very prominent form of spur, kind of a spur almost effect at the bottom of the D over here. And just the general roundness of this full system versus this more squarish approach in Drive. We can see that difference between the two very clearly. So this is interesting. If you notice now from X height to ascender, your ascender is significantly larger in proportion to the whole. Yeah, so I'm curious about. I'm very curious how that's going to pan out. Let's see how that. Let's investigate that more. But just take notice again, like how relatively shorter this ascender space is to the whole X height position.
Yeah, that's a big difference, and I like
almost double.
I like these small like ascenders, but I don't know. I was reading something about how when you do monospace, you need to think about because when setting a monospace in an environment for coding, it's very difficult to, you can adjust how do you call it? I don't know the word in English. The space
line
between
spacing?
the line spacing. It's hard to adjust it. So usually you need to rely on the natural adjustment of the letter. So they have like this they don't have the option to adjust the spacing. So I thought that bigger ascendance would help if it was very very tight, so that the lines of code wouldn't like squish together. I don't know. That's just a decision I took.
Okay. We'll see how this all pans out in the setting of text going forward. The A, I like focusing on because it's a very distinctive letter. So you notice that the tail terminal is here versus the absence of it in the A. This flat approach versus the arch approach you chose. It looks like here you chose no flatness inside that counter. This follows a more traditional model, except for over here, where it connects with the joint with the stem. This seems to mimic in spirit a lot what the shoulder was doing in the joint in the D and the N, for example, and how this terminal is handled for the A. Yours again seems to have a more smooth kind of, especially this part right here is very smooth and very kind of rounded, much like the shoulder of the N. So I say a family relation, not the same exactly at all, but similar in feeling across those. Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to see. I can see a very clear difference of weight from this stem to the terminal. I can see that much. It appears, I'm not sure if these are equal, but here's this one seems heavier than this guy over here.
Yes. No, I think they are equal.
They're equal? Okay.
Equal. Well, I try to make them equal, like equal way.
Yeah.
Also, I think that the letters are always heavier on the on the bottom side. So I try to make like that adjustment.
Yeah. Well, I point that out because, for example, I think it's the rate of loss of weight over here in the shoulder that's different between the two. And that's what's causing me some questions about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's see, and then also notes a proportion of how far the bowl extrudes out. The MonoCromo is extending out more. So as a point, let's see, move forward from there. Another G. So both are using two-story form Gs. I think the particular notes is, again, the more rectangular form of drive mono versus the more circular form. This is an interesting move where traditionally this is usually thinner and this is usually a significant weight gain. Like, for example, you notice this approach. MonoCromo is taking a different approach for this neck and kind of horizontal area of the spine right here into the loop. So, Derek, you want to share some thoughts on that? What your thinking was for that?
Well, I was thinking about this space, like using my idea of the sans humanist like approach with letters. That this space was supposed to be very easy to read because I don't know. I just like the clear shapes that you can make with white. So I try to leave as much space as I could, and having this curve be more like rounded, and that's my idea. And that's how things like I started to do the relationship between weights of the upper part and the down part of the G. So I don't know. I just started making this shape.
Okay. We'll see. Again, we'll investigate how this works out in text. But good point.
That's it.
Good. Interesting point, though. All right, on to the S. So the S, I think the particular note, again, the kind of flatness versus round approach with terminals we're seeing here, right? Most of this approach versus your more curved approach.
Yes.
Here and here. It appears there's, well, let's say I see some draftsmanship issues right there. I think that point's a little too low. It's a little too abrupt in transition from this top segment to this spine area over here in that one node. Yeah, so that's a note just for observation.
Yes, I see it.
Yeah. Cool.
Interesting. DS is very hard.
Oh, yes, S's are very hard. So actually a note I want to talk about with these I's, besides the serifs, right? Some other fun notes. One is I notice yours is not equivalent positioned on the serif on the bottom. Well, I believe it appears that it is equivalently spaced in drive mono. Here's actually an example where I can actually now make some stronger statements by contrast. I think yours is higher contrast if I compare that serif to the stem compared to
Oh
yours.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your tittle appears to be larger, right? Which is interesting considering your weight is lighter. That's interesting how that's going to pan out versus drive monos. And lastly, I think both of them do this, but I think is fun. Your tittles are slightly non-centered, shifted.
Yes.
Yes, both of them do it. Yours is more about doing it, but so is drive mono. I think that's a very fascinating point. Was there any particular reason for that?
I was looking at other monospace,
And they do that too.
everybody does it, so I
There you
just
go.
tagged along.
I have not made a monospace font, so I cannot comment about why you do that. I'm going to make a presumption it's about just the positioning spacing of
Yes,
a form with the dot inside. That's my assumption. Cool.
and it looks weird when you center it. It's something I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe is this thing that it makes it look
They
like a
counterbalance it. Yeah, they counterbalance that horizontal bar. A lot of the monospace fonts eyes will have that form.
yes.
That is true.
That's why they shift them, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we move on to Act 2, which is now start expanding our investigation. So let's start with the first question of the cap height, right? So as you can tell, the cap height is at the same level as ascender height. So we can use that as an inferment to understand. So basically, I would say relative to, like, in relationship to its capitals. Actually, pardon me, the ascender is slightly taller than the capitals in drive mono. But with that said, if that's the case, then we can actually definitely confirm that the X height is larger in drive mono, but the body of MonoCromo is larger by default. So that's the point. That's a very important distinction. Is that notice that the question of X height has also a secondary factor of the body on the type in of itself. So that those two, you need to kind of know both questions to address effectively how the type will behave on typesetting.
That's correct.
Yeah. Here's also, I think both are relatively narrow H capitals, right? The capitals appear to be relatively narrower. I think again because they're all set on the same width, so that's one of the consequences of that decision. Your capitals will feel naturally kind of smaller compared to the lowercase letters. I see that's true for both forms.
Interesting.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So that's to answer that question. So I like using punctuation. I think it's very telling the difference in punctuations. Yours are these triangular forms for the quotations and quote marks, right? And I have to say yours are much more successful. I mean, drive monos, there's literally like an abrupt movement, like right here and here. It's not as convincing, the quote marks per se. I think yours are much more intentional and very dramatic. Like yours are taking a much more higher level of space. And also in your quote mark especially, you actually raised it above the descender line. I'm assuming the baseline.
Yes.
Which I believe, I mean, obviously, drive mono is doing it as well, but yours is much more aggressive in doing so. Because I can see that point taken more emphatically.
Yes. That's a decision I took because the main primary of my type was code lines. So you need really aggressive punctuation marks because they make a lot of difference. And what I see with a lot of monospace type is that they like try to be very like cautionate about their punctuation marks, so they tend to be very similar in shape. So I like them like bigger and more aggressive.
Yeah,
dramatic.
I do notice also something's going on with your period, like these period sections in the quote, in the question mark and exclamation compared to your tittle. They appear larger, so these are larger than your tittle design, and they appear to be much heavier than the particular forms above, like this section of the question mark and this section of the exclamation mark. There appears to be not as much of a difference in the drive mono. There is some, but not much.
Nice.
All right, on to numbers. So I see this is interesting. This is actually an interesting moment. You commented before you wanted more rounded shapes, and I do see that in some aspects of it. But then I see things like the bottom of this 9, the top of the 6, for example. Even this approach right here a little bit, much more angular approach in your numbers.
That's correct.
Yeah, there's a little. There's some little bit of attentions of that in terms of, for example, some of your forms like this is super rounded proportion and shape compared to again these flat sections I'm seeing across the design. So I sense a little bit of inconsistency or discontinuity of the logic compared to your project you were talking about or thinking about on that. The numbers in Drive Mono seem more correlated to the system in the sense that like, the more abrupt approach in the terminals, right? This seems to have a certain angularity. There's some interesting moves, and again, I can see that also in the terminals of the 2 and 3, for example. The 4 actually is an interesting move. There's a little arching occurring on the top section over there. But much like yours, appears to have a low-waisted form for the 4. So those are similarities of those two.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, I'm sensing that these appear to be the same. There seems to be no overshoots on the round of the 2, for example.
That's a good thing to note. Yeah, because I usually try to make the overshoots. I don't remember exactly.
Well, pardon me. I apologize. There is an overshoot, but very slight. I could see a very small sliver of white, and this does not for the 2. So there is overshoot. I apologize. But I don't think it's enough, though. I think you need to go a little more aggressive with it.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I think, the numbers were very tricky part of the
numbers
project.
are hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about these shapes. It's weird with the system. Like, I decided to make them like squarish because I started feeling that that's the way what my numbers were gonna be. Like with this type of serif things, they were looking like I kind of like the squareness to complement like these things. But in terms of other letters, like I think maybe I could do a check on that.
Yeah, a more softer, smoother approach. I think there's a way you could accommodate for that.
Sure.
Cool. Nice. All right, so here we are.
Yay, text.
Yep, some text time. So yeah, so definitely the first thing is the comment before about the body of the type. It's being clear here, right? Your MonoCromo feels larger in the base setting, in the same setting compared to Drive Mono. That much is clear. You were commenting before about typesetting, right? And the line space being a particular point. Yeah, I would actually see yours. Unfortunately, it's more crowded. I think because of the combination of the body plus your decisions of the ascender space, particularly and cap height. So as a result, it has less white space between the lines, for example, than the Drive Mono approach between the two. Your punctuation is very clear. I mean, that's the thing. Your punctuation is very clear. I would actually garner some cases that the quote marks are excellent. I think I would definitely say Drive Monos it's too diminutive and way too mellow, and that's true of the period as well. That period is not strong enough to work. Yours are very clearly distinguishable, so I think they're very successful under that understanding of metric. I do feel like your parentheses are a little. I mean, something's up with them. So I don't. Maybe it's the weight, or maybe the way they're drawn, but I think there's something about them that is incongruent to what else is going on with the project.
Yes.
Compared to I think Dry Mouse was a little more appropriate in that, and that's in that direction, I would say. Let's see. I'm trying to see some other notes. I would say, let's look at the M and the N. I'm going to see if I can find an M. Yeah, the particular weight issues, I don't really, they're definitely, let's put it this way. I definitely do not see them at all, very minorly so, in the Drive Mono. I can see a little more clearly now that I know what to look for, but I would not be able to notice it directly. There is apparently it's some proportional width issues, like the E, for example. I mean, notice the E.
Okay.
This seems a little too wide relative to everything else.
I see.
In some cases, I think you can get away with making it a little bit narrower.
Yes, and maybe this part also. Like,
Yeah, that terminal. Something's going on there.
mhm.
Yeah, we didn't
But
talk
yeah,
about the E.
I can see the E being better because this has a very like a gray like feeling to it. It's just I like how this type is doing it
Yeah,
with
I think I agree. I think it's well resolved with the spacing, even with the challenges of monospace. With
yeah,
the
the spacing is very hard. And I also the C is very difficult to space, right?
yeah, yours has a weird it's almost like yours is rotated,
Uh-huh.
like it's like rotated this way or the other way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's unbalanced. Yeah,
Yeah, oh man. Type has a lot of things.
it's hard. I know it's very hard, but that's not.
Very hard.
But the very point of like demonstration, we can see clearly what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm. This was a good exercise.
Yeah.
This comparison. I like Drive Mono a lot. I didn't knew it before, but
Well,
I
that's the
started
point. We learn new things. Exactly. By the way, I saw about the W's, and then you can see. I want to point that out before we move on. Yes, I could
Mhm.
definitely see. I think actually, I think you. I think if you had done a W like this, I think you've been more successful. I think
Mhm.
you were kind of stuck in a problem where you have to kind of fit this stuff. The middle bar had to get up to the X height zone. Uh, I think there was some compromises in proportion that as a result of that.
Mhm.
Yeah. But you're right
I
that a
don't know.
W is a very particular form. It's such a complicated shape. Yeah, there's different ways to approach it.
Everybody does it different.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just thought that this shape was gonna solve the problems with the space here. Like I'm trying to be more like more like the M or like the V. Um, but I don't know. I like the like this white space here. I think it's very good.
Yeah, I
Like
think more resolved.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
It stands out less.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That also relates to the U, because I'm looking at their U drawing versus yours. Uh, yeah, I actually in an odd moment, I feel like there's not enough space on the right side
Mm-hmm.
of the U.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh
Cool.
man, kerning well, not kerning,
There's no
but
kerning, it's just spacing.
spacing. But you need to simulate the kerning, right? With the natural spacing. So one change can affect like all the rest of the letters. It's
Yes,
very hard.
I know.
I don't know. I think I should
Yep.
like that's where the project ended. Like we did like this text proofs, and we were trying to make corrections on that, but you can keep doing this over and over and over. You'll never finish.
Oh, of course, of course. All
It's
right.
so fun.
Well, yeah. So, what I could say, what I could say so far, that I think there is some strong potential in MonoCromo. Yeah, but I would agree. I think there definitely is some spacing and mainly spacing. I would say, and some drawing. There are some drawing issues. Uh, some overshoot. I think particularly with overshoots. I think that's one thing standing out to me. Overshoots, some weight. Not even weight. Really, it's just spacing and drop and ship. Those are the two major areas
Mhm.
of contention. Just because I compare that to what Drive Mono is doing. Drive Mono, I think, it's generally been very successful. I feel like in terms of having a logic and playing it through, and even with the constraints of monospace, being overall effective and achieving good harmony of the forms. I would say.
Yes. Hmm.
Cool. I can never get to the last slide properly with this thing. Whee! Pardon me. All right.
Okay.
So back over here. Yeah. So yeah, basically these are both languages. I think both are, but with that said, actually I would critique there. Remember the critique of Drive Mono is not in the forms themselves. I think it's actually its weak points is punctuation, as we noted. I think in terms of a coding environment purpose and use, it was not the strongest, but MonoCromo was more successful in that approach. So,
Hmm.
basically if I had to choose between these two for coding, I would pick MonoCromo just because of those explicitness of its forms, make it more effective for that. But if I'm using like a monospace font for the aesthetic of it and some non-coding purpose, I think Drive Mono would be a more reasonable choice to make at this juncture. You're still working on the project, I know, Derek. So I hope these observations were going to help you to be more successful down the road.
Yes, they were very good. Thank you very much, Thomas.
A pleasure. Well, Derek, thank you for joining me, and I hope you all enjoyed this conversation about monospace fonts. And don't forget, if you have a project you're working on, I'd love to have you join me for the call and explore your project with you. All right, Derek, have a great evening, and everyone else online, take care.
Take care.